Today on the Riff, Drew Williams. We hope today is helpful. Thanks for listening.
Welcome, Riff Raff. We are back with another Riff episode, and this is John Martz, and I am here with a special, I was going to say guest, but even though this is your first time on the Riff,
first time,
you are no guest. You are what do we call it? Co-riffer?
Co-riffer.
Co-riffer. I like it. Honestly,
it's gonna be co-rific.
That has a good ring to it.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
I'm a little nervous. Long time listener, first time riffer.
Riffer?
Yeah.
Well, hey, you know what? You'll pick it up real quick.
Okay.
It's and I understand the riff part now, because when I am here in this seat, in Justin's seat,
how does it feel?
It's powerful.
Yep.
And I feel like I'm just interviewing you.
Yeah.
So I'm like, we get riff all day.
Pressure's on.
And so even this episode might be a little bit different, where we are getting to know Drew Williams. I haven't even introduced you yet. Yeah. So I should have done that from the get. You know what? Actually, take back my powers. The first time. So cut me some grace. But really, we have also kind of across North Point, we've designed an event where you can get to know Drew. This is just like the first serving of this.
Yeah.
But we fought, we toiled, we burned the midnight oil to come up with the best possible name for this event.
Yeah.
Give it to me.
Williams Welcome.
Come on. That's
2 words, same first letter, which I've learned is alliteration.
Absolutely. People are clapping in their cars right now.
Yeah.
And they're like, wow.
They might have pulled over.
Probably just for safety reasons. I believe it.
How do they think of that?
So that's going to be an event at each one of our campuses at different times, locations, where they'll just get to ask you and Kristen a bunch of questions.
Yeah.
What makes you you? What's the heartbeat of you? And I mean, anything that comes to mind. So it'll be a great opportunity to chat, to laugh, to dance, to whatever. Yeah. I just think a lot of things might happen at those events. Okay. And the name is spectacular, but I think the events are going to be even better.
It'll be so good.
And so I'm going to start off with my first question. How dare you?
Yeah.
Because the reason I fought and toiled, burned the midnight oil, that is my favorite newscaster.
Yeah.
And he is a huge Chiefs fan.
Yeah.
Nick Wright. He kind of looks like Lord Farquaad.
Yeah.
And the reason I like him is because he's a Chiefs fan.
Right.
And what I found out about you.
Yeah.
How dare you?
I know.
The opposite of a Chiefs fan.
I'm the opposite of a Chiefs fan. Yeah. When in my interview process, when I was interviewing, the last thing my wife said, she's like, just don't talk about football because then they'll find out. And the last question I was getting asked in an interview is like, they mentioned like football. They're like, "Oh, you are a Chiefs fan, right?" And I was just like, I got to go see you guys. So yeah, when I was in first grade, I lived in Portland, Oregon, and my friend's name was Mike Gehrig, and he was a big Broncos fan, and he got me a little John Elway like action figure thing and a Broncos hat, and I guess is like, all right, I guess I'm a Broncos fan because Mike's a Broncos fan. That's how it happened, first grade.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then you just stay ruthlessly committed for the rest of your life.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
That's how it works.
You're not a fan if you're not ruthlessly committed. So I've been through the ups and the downs. Chiefs fans, you get it. You had the Elvis Gerback years.
Oh my. Matt Castle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could probably do a whole episode on failed Chiefs quarterbacks. But
absolutely. But I just feel like that, as much as it's a red flag that you're a Broncos fan, it's a green flag.
Loyal.
That you are, absolutely. Faithful. That you have been faithful to someone so unfaithful to you.
Kyle Orton.
Oh, no, my.
Jay Cutler.
But you did have Peyton Manning for a little bit.
Yeah,
so
that was the best.
Get over it.
Yeah.
You snuck in a Super Bowl there.
We sure did. Did. So anyway, diehard Broncos fans in my family. So I know I just lost major points with a lot of people, but you know.
Hey, you know what? We'll win it back. Yeah. We'll win it back, hopefully.
Yeah,
I can't promise, actually. It's the Riff. So just watch what you say for the rest of the podcast. But I do want to hear. One, I want to talk about how you landed here at North Point.
Yeah.
But I feel like we got to back the train all the way up to really your beginning. So you grew up as a pastor's kid.
Yes, sir.
Walk me through that.
Yeah. Yeah, when I was 9 years old, my dad was he managed a motorhome dealership in Portland, Oregon. And when I was 9, we moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico. And my dad became a pastor of a small church there that needed a pastor. And that's when in the ministry. So from 9 years on, I was a PK. So we were, a small church. It was a mobile setup. for a lot of years. So stacking chairs and winding cables and learn how to run sound and do lights and, lead worship in a pinch, fill in for whatever kid's worker didn't show up. So my brother, sister, and I we would go to, especially my brother and I would go to church early with my dad and just set everything up, tear it all down. And so some people are like gym rats, like they grow up, in the gym. Like we just grew up in the church and helping my dad build that thing for years and years. So that's how that looked.
I love
Similar
that.
to you though, right?
Absolutely, but maybe less of the setup tear down, and more of the. We did have a gym, which was awesome.
We did not have a gym.
So,
no, we did not have a gym.
Oh man, so I spent way too much time building bad habits with my basketball form.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, did a lot of people come up to you and they're like, "Hey, are you going to follow in your dad's footsteps?" Did you get that a bunch?
Yeah, I think you do to a certain degree. But my dad was my dad's a great man, great Christian man, like loves the Lord, but he's not a very religious guy. So like the typical like church guy, like he always was this really straight shooter. He didn't really, people didn't even treat me different, like growing up in the church. So I wasn't really treated different as a pastor's kid. So I got some of that, but some of that weird churchy energy of like, you got to be a pastor, like the man of the word, like your dad. I didn't really get a lot of that. So, but you do get it. You catch a passion for it. I think my parents, like growing up, what you see is people's lives change. And I watched my dad take a wild step of faith to go do something that was just in his guts to go do. And then in hindsight, now that I'm a dad, I look back, I was 9, my sister was 10, my brother would have been like 13, and he left everything to go pastor a church where I don't even know if he was guaranteed a paycheck. It was a pretty rough situation, But now that I'm a parent, I look back and think, wow, what a step of faith, and how to believe in something and care about something to really like be able to pick up your whole family and do that. Like even more respect for my dad, I'm like, man, that took guts, that took faith, that took courage to go do it. And so, growing up, some of the be a pastor when you grow up stuff, but not a lot because my parents, they just, they loved people just wholeheadedly. They weren't trying to build a big church. They were trying to build big people. And they just poured their life out for people. And some people that could do nothing for them in return. And they made a huge impact in the world, one life at a time. And I think for me, that's what was the real stickiness. It was not pressure from people, but like seeing the impact to people of a life laid down that's like willing to like invest their life into somebody else. That's the thing that probably caused me to have a hunger for it the most.
Yeah. So. And you see the good, you see the bad in people and every, thing associated with that. And you probably learn to, eat the meat, spit out the bones type of deal.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And that led you to saying, hey, I think I might want to pursue something like that. So you ended up going to college for ministry.
Yeah. When I was, I had already, I was 22, so I'd already started going to University of New Mexico for a couple of years in Albuquerque. And I didn't really know what I was doing. I was kind of, there's a lot of pressure when you're 18 to figure out your life, and most people don't really know what they're doing.
So true.
But so I was going to college, and I was also volunteering in leading the youth ministry. So there was a small youth group of 15, 20 kids that I was leading, and that's where I was finding fulfillment and purpose. And like this little old church Wednesday nights, with these kids is like, this is fulfilling, this is meaningful. I'm like, there's nothing else in my life that mattered, but I'm like, this matters and I love this. And so anyway, that led to me at 22, I packed up and moved to Portland Bible College up in Portland, Oregon. Got a degree in theology. So I spent 4 years there getting like formal education to be a pastor. That was what I believe God had put in my heart to do. I'm like, I don't know what this looks like, but I love people. I love the Bible. And like when you see God's word and God's, God touching people's lives, it's like, this matters. And I don't know about making money. I don't know how I'm going to do anything else, but like, this is what I care about. So that was like a step of faith to go, move to Portland where I didn't really know anybody. It was the school my dad went to. So that was kind of the tie-in. So I was Steve's kid there, but yeah, that's how I ended up doing it.
I'm still going to call you Steve's kid.
You can.
I like that.
Yeah.
So then you got your degree and you're like, okay, I'm going to go into full-time ministry. And so you've just been in that ever since, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's how it works. Yeah. When you follow God, you always get a point A to point B. Like he's always,
straight line,
he gives you the full plan.
Totally makes sense.
Exactly how it's going to work out. And then you can just be brainless and follow it, No, that was the plan though. In my head, I'm like, I want to move back to Albuquerque and serve in my dad's church. And we're going to, grow this thing. And eventually I'll end up being like, getting a job at the church and doing that. And so that was kind of the life plan. So I came back and started volunteering at my dad's church. I was working at T-Mobile at the time. It was a long story that kind of overlapped, but in Bible college, I was selling phones at the mall to pay my way through school. So I was the guy in the mall being like, hey man, what kind of phone you got?
No.
I was that guy.
Yeah. Hold on. What was your move? Hey, big guy.
Yeah. What's up, big guy?
Hey, big guy.
Big dog. What kind of? what kind of phone you got? What kind of phone you got? You know?
Love your shoes. Yeah. Hey, can I talk to you about phones? Like, what was the move? What was the move?
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, it was a lot. You just had to talk to people. And that's where I learned to sell because, you know, I was 2 or 3 months into that job and my boss was like, hey, man, you haven't met quota. Like, you're a nice guy. People like you. But if you don't meet quota, you're going to get fired. And so that's where I just had to learn to like connect with people. The mall I worked at was downtown Portland. So it was kind of a mix of like uppity business people and then like drug dealers, you know, and a little bit of in between. But there's a Foot Locker around the corner. There's always people shoplifting and stealing and the Foot Locker guys chasing them down. So there was, you know, people watching at the mall. If you ever had a mall job, it's a whole subculture. Yeah, I had to learn how to sell there, you know, and so there was a guy, I had long moppy hair. This is before I was bald. And so I just kind of looked like a slacker college kid, you know. And this guy named Ryan Creighton, I'll never forget him. I was like, he was top sales guy, you know, but I was like, man, I went to Ryan. I'm like, hey man, I need to learn how to sell. And he just looked at me. He was like, cut your hair. I was like, what? He's like, cut your hair. You know, if you cut your hair, then I'll start talking about selling, but you don't look like someone who people want to buy from.
Whoa.
So he was just like ruthless, but I needed that. Like that was good feedback. I was like, dang it. So I actually did it.
So then you just shaved it bald.
No, I still actually had some follicle power then. So I got to get more like clean cut haircut, started tucking my shirt and started looking the part. He was like, if you want to sell, you want to sell to the top end clients. That's where the most money's at. And when those people come in and they look at you or me, they're going to come to me every time because I look cleaner cut than you do. You look like the college kid, you know? And I was, but that was like good feedback though. It was like, hey, cut your hair, you know? So that's when I learned like, okay, I had to learn the skill of selling because I wasn't going to eat otherwise. I was eating Easy Mac in the break room because that's all I could afford. You know, that's the deal. So anyway.
So you probably got really good at rejection at that time, which leads me to, how'd you meet Kristen?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I don't know. So I'm genuinely curious.
Yeah, there's a lot we could go down here. No, I met Kristen when we were 18. I did get good at rejection. You get a lot of no's. If you're in sales, you know that. You got
it's a numbers game.
It's a numbers game. And you have to you got to develop thick skin. So if you want to, I always tell young people, like, if you want to make money in life, you know, the guy, if you're ever at the lake and you see the big house and you're like, man, what does that guy do? You know, normally it's one of three things. One, they own a business. 2, they're great at sales, or 3, they're a great leader. Like every organization needs someone who's got the guts to start it, which is the business owner. They always have to have sales because no sales, no nothing, and then leadership. So those are skills that are always in demand. If you can develop any one of those 3 skills, you can go a long way in life, you know? You face a lot of rejection in all 3 of those. You face your internal, your internal critic in all 3 of those. You've got to put yourself out there, face rejection, develop thick skin, and maintain a soft heart. That's the stuff that'll help you be successful no matter what you do. But a lot of rejection in the sales world, but I was able to graduate college debt-free. Met Kristen when we were 18. So Kristen and I met on a church missions trip. Basically, that's how we met. And then we just stayed friends. We were long distance boyfriend, girlfriend. We were friends, then we were boyfriend, girlfriend. Then we both moved to Portland, Oregon at the same time. This is a long story that really, the moral of this story is I was an idiot. But we got to Portland, Oregon. We both went to Bible college. And then 3 months later, we broke up. It was like, we're going to move there and finally live in the same place and get married. And then we broke up. And so basically it was because I was still young and immature. And she was ready to settle down and I was not. And it was just became like obvious that I was still dumb. And so anyway, typical story though. Normally the girl is more mature than the guy. Yeah, is typically how it ends up working, you know? So that was kind of the deal. And then we ended up 5 years later, got back together and got married quick. There's a lot more detail to that story. But 5 years later, it was like, if I don't marry Kristen, I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
Because we stayed friends that whole time. We always had a love for each other, but it was just, God was doing different things in our lives too, man. I mean, God had to do some things in me. There's certain things that if you're young and single, like I'd say, hey, let God deal with some issues in your heart while you're still single. Like get that thing taken care of. Don't take that suitcase into your marriage if you don't have to. You know what I mean? And so there are certain things that God did in both of our lives that honestly made us better ready to be married to each other when we actually did. So we got married when we were 27 years old and yeah, so kind of weaving parts of the life journey together. But yeah, Kristen's awesome. People get to know her. She's not a stage person. Like she's a lobby person. So you're going to get to know her by saying hi in the lobby. She's, warm, hospitable, friendly. The word for her is grace. She's a gracious human, and she's awesome. But you're not going to see her on a stage a whole lot. That's like her worst nightmare is a microphone and hundreds of eyeballs on her. That's just not how she rolls. That's true for most people, but anyway.
Warm, hospitable, friendly. Those were 3 attributes that I picked up from the first time I met her.
Yeah.
So I agree.
Yeah.
And so then you, at some point in time, you picked up everything you owned.
Yeah.
And you moved to Springfield. So walk me, how'd you get there and then make that decision?
Yeah. Yeah. So I was volunteering at my dad's church, serving and building. And like at a certain point, I realized, that for me, I just realized my dad and I are very similar in values and beliefs, but gifting mix. It just wasn't like family and ministry is good for some families. It's like family and business. Like it works for some families, but it doesn't for most, And so for me, I was like, my relationship with my dad is actually better when I stop trying to turn him into the pastor and leader that I would be and start recognizing the gift that God's put in him and how do I best serve him to help him be what he wants me to be. And then as I started to do that, I started to kind of let go of the idea of working for him. I'm like, I don't know that would be good anyway, And so, and God was really just blessing what I was doing at T-Mobile. And so when I was there at the time, I'm like, man, I don't care about this job. I just want to work at the church. That's how it started. But over time, I started to realize that actually the greater impact I was actually having was in my work. Like at my job, I had influence and, I was still volunteering at the church. I was still doing all the list of things. I was leading worship for a while and teaching and preaching some. But really, it's like my career at T-Mobile started to really take off. And it was just sometimes when you're in life, you just got to follow the favor. That sounds like a preachery thing to do. But there are certain times that God is just blessing certain things that you're doing. It just works. And it's like there's no explanation for it. It's not because you're the smartest person in the room or because you're extraordinarily gifted. Like sometimes God's hand just comes on a certain thing you're doing. And so for me, that was all happening at T-Mobile. It was every project I was on just seemed to work and it just was moving. And I'm like, God's blessing this, And so, I did project management, product development, so some technical work. But a lot of what I really did was just listen to people and help try to find technical solutions for their problems. And so, if you ever watch Office Space, it's like the guy who's like, I bring the specs from the customer to the engineers. I've got people skills. So there's some of that and all that. And long story short, I used to travel around to all of our call centers. So like I was actually meeting with leaders in all of our call centers and building programs and products for them to use, trying to find ways to make the customer experience better through technology. And so I would travel in and out of them. So I'd come to Springfield several times, and I knew the team there. And one day I just got a phone call and it's like, hey, what's your interest in moving to Springfield? We need a new leader there.
And you said off the charts. That sounds like an incredible Springfield, Massachusetts.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait, which Illinois, one are we talking about?
Yeah. No, I knew it. Like we'd been in and out of here before quite a bit traveling. Like, but it was, my first question was like, why me? Cause I felt unqualified. I'm like, that is a much bigger job than I think I'm qualified to do. It's this intimidating thing of like, oh wow, that's a big job. And so, Jim was the name of, he was a VP. He was like, here's what I need. He was like, everywhere I go, you have a reputation of someone who actually listens to our frontline employees and does something about their problems. He was like, I just need someone to go into that building, lead people, listen to them, and fix the problems. He was like, and so he's like, your reputation is that you listen. And so that was kind of it. And so we moved here and I ended up becoming about a year later, became the site director of the call center at T-Mobile. If you're in Springfield, it's across the highway from North Point, Springfield. And so at the time there was 400 employees. There's a 72% attrition rate. So people were, that means you snapshot the employee base a year from now, 72% of them won't be here because the conditions were just not good. It's a tough job. It's a very hard job doing customer service all day. So yeah, that's what we moved here for. And then really that was God's like leadership, like boot camp for me. You learn a lot in books, but you learn more by doing it, and for me, turning around what had become inadvertently a toxic culture, it had become just a rough place to do a hard job. And it's, I'm like, I got to create a great place to do what's still going to be a hard job. And so, just implemented some stuff on culture and people and development and doubled down on investing in leaders, over about a 5-year period. We turned, the employee base was about 400 people when I got there. At the end, we had 800 people. So I had 800 employees in that building. Our attrition rate was down to 18%. I had 10% of my staff enrolled in college that T-Mobile was paying for because we just learned to invest. If you invest in the people, help them see a future for themselves, give them some hope, they'll find a bigger connection in the work that they're doing. And then, the real juice was how leaders treat employees. That to me was the biggest thing is listen to your customers, listen to your employees, create great environments. Like as a leader, a lot of times you're building a greenhouse, you're building an environment for growth, And so for me, that was my main focus. And it wasn't rocket science, man. It really was like, I showed up with feeling ill-equipped, underprepared, but I had a Bible, John Maxwell's 21 Laws of Leadership.
Irrefutable laws.
Yeah, irrefutable laws. You can't argue with Maxwell. And then just listened and learned and implemented. And honestly, my prayer life went through the roof in that season because I'm like, God, I can't do this if you don't help me. Like, you think I'm qualified for this for some reason. I don't feel qualified, but God, you put me here. And it's like, God just changes your assignment. And so for that time period, I pastored people, I led people, I think I made a bigger difference in that building for those people than I probably ever could have from behind a pulpit. And so went to school to be a pastor and a leader, but God's assignment for me was not like the life of Joseph. It wasn't just you go to the palace. You had to have the season of Potiphar's house. And like, that's the season where, where did Joseph learn to manage and lead? He did it by being the janitor at Potiphar's house. And it wasn't his calling. It wasn't what he wanted to do. It wasn't his dream, but it's where he ended up. And so I think when you end up in those seasons of like, man, this is not what I had on my life bingo board. It's like, well, no, you just make the assumption God put me here. He knows what he's doing. I'm surprised, but he's not. And so I'm just going to assume that God's in it. I'm going to bank on God's faithfulness and goodness and go from there. And then I'm going to do my best and let God, and then transfer the worry and anxiety to him. Every night I go to sleep like, God, we got some problems, but for whatever reason, you think I can do this. I don't think I can. So this is a commission. We're in this together. So I'm going to transfer the weight of these burdens onto your shoulders. And I'm going to go to sleep, and tomorrow morning we'll go work again. And so I think God often puts you in over your head. He puts you in situations where you're like, man, this is more, bigger, different than I expected. But I think if you'll be faithful to it in the season, you'll see his goodness,
Okay, 3 questions I've got.
Hit me.
Pull out of those. 1, you threw this out a couple times and I didn't take the bait, but I really wanted to. You led worship. Are you a singer?
No, I mean, you keep me in the key
you
of
make
G.
a joyful noise?
Yeah, give me 4 chords and the truth. You know what I mean? So give me the key of G and I can hang.
I can't wait for a sermon illustration with that. I'm so excited.
Yeah, doubt it.
Okay.
Doubt it.
I don't know. Okay, second thing, you talked a lot about environments. Building the kind of environment that, you basically said great environment to do hard work.
Yeah.
And I bet there's a bunch of people that are in charge of an environment right now.
Yeah.
Or at least they help cultivate an environment that's already set.
Yeah.
Walk me through, what did you do there? And you can be quick with it, you can be long with it, but I'm very curious. What did that look like?
Yeah. I mean, I can definitely be long with it, but I'll try to be quick with it. The biggest thing is, to me, that sets environment. I always think about thermometers and thermostats, right? It's like the thermometer will tell you what the temperature is, but the thermostat is what sets the temperature, And so you want to create an environment for growth. My father-in-law started Red Bud Farms and nurseries out in Fort Scott, Kansas, and he started it, and it's still going, but growing plants and trees, and he has this greenhouse that you can go into any time of year, and there's growth happening there. You can walk in there in January, and it's 30 something degrees outside, but it's 60 something inside, and so he's opening vents and setting temperatures. And so he doesn't stress over soil. That matters. Seeds matter. But what really matters is not the soil or the seed, it's the environment you put it in. So is this the right temperature for growth? Is this the right, humidity for growth? And how do we create the right ideal state for something to grow in? You can't make people grow. Just like you can't make people choose Jesus. But you can create an environment where it's easier to do so because it's simple to understand. It connects with both their head and their heart. And so I think to me is I'm always thinking about what environment are we creating? And I think from a leadership standpoint, if you're listening now and you lead anything, whether it's your own home or a business or you're running part of North Point, it's the culture and environment that you create. And that really is not created just through mantras or slogans. That stuff matters, but what matters is your behavior. At the end of the day, how a leader shows up in a room, what is your demeanor? What is your attitude? What, do you have a positivity to you about? Are you talking good about people? You said this to me. You're like, hey, leaders have 400-pound words. And that's a quote from you that it's stuck in my guts. I'm like, whoa, that's true. Your words matter more as a leader.
I believe I said 450-pound word. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. Mine are 400. I'm still working to 450. Still repping. So, Yeah, I just think that's where that stuff matters. Like culture and environment, it's how do leaders behave? How do they act? You know, a leader that's got a scowl on their face or is, you know, like you just mentioned, like my wife's a lobby person. You know what I mean? Like she's not going to, you know, that's a leadership thing. It's, you know, it's not what you say from the stage. That stuff matters. But how do you treat people when you're eyeball to eyeball with them? Do you decide to care about them? Do you love them? Do you invest in them? And then do you have a general excitement? Do you have faith in your own spirit about what God's doing, you know? And I think those are those things. Like if you lead a business, how you treat your employees is how you treat your customers. It's simple, it's old school, but it just works. You know, if you're mean, grouchy, demanding, micromanaging to your employees, like how do you think they're going to treat your customers? You know what I mean? And so I think, you know, I go back from the business sense. I'm always thinking about customer and employee experience, you know, but those are things I dwell on and think about quite a bit, but I think there's a lot of overlap between.
Yeah, and I made a joke about, you know, you went to school for ministry, and then did you go right into full-time ministry? And the you know, it's like, well, not traditionally, but yes, right? It's the same thing about a kid who goes and gets a leadership degree, and he's 22 years old. Right. And there's also been another guy who didn't get a degree, but he's 45, and he's been leading.
Yeah.
Like, who would I probably trust more?
Right.
Yeah. Like the guy is doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when it comes to what you've been doing, the environments that you've been building.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been creating a safe place well before, you know, for people to grow.
Yeah.
And it'd be the same thing spiritually, right?
Yep.
Creating a safe place for people to, well, one, not that I would make you grow, but that we can connect you with Jesus, that you can grow.
Right.
And you've been doing the same thing in the business world for so long. And so I know what someone might say is maybe like, well, so what church are you coming from?
Right.
Right? Like, oh, where have you been pastoring? And you're like, T-Mobile Center, baby.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And loud and proud because, one, you've got that experience of saying, hey, I'm helping people see something bigger than themselves. And I'm creating the kind of environment that helps them grow. And all throughout Facebook and different things, like I've seen people calling you Uncle Drew. Yeah. And it's so cool to see. Like seriously, one of the best compliments, I'm sure, is someone from a T-Mobile call center that's like, dude, I'm so not surprised that you landed in a pastoral job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's gotta feel so like, God, I've just tried to be faithful. And as much as I've been faithful, and I haven't seen the fruit, like this might be one of those moments where I'm like, okay, you have been doing something.
Yeah. Right. Well, I think that's the thing is like, you know, you pastoring people, a pastor is a shepherd. You know, it's someone who cares about people, that cares for people, that protects people, that keeps people safe. And so I think, you know, you can be that anywhere you're at. Like I think of the purpose, calling, assignment, right? It's kind of that lens I look through. Your purpose, all of us have the same purpose, to know God and to make him known. That is doctrinally why man exists. We don't exist to have ease and comfort. Like and you can chase that, but you're gonna wind up feeling purposeless at some point. Like the real purpose that you'll find in life when you sleep with your soul at rest is when you're living in a lifestyle that's saying, hey, I'm knowing God and I'm making him known. That truly is why God made you. You know, so that's the same for all of us. You know, your calling is your unique gift mix, what you're good at, your background, how God wired you, your skill sets, even the experiences that God allowed you to go through in your life that are deeply formative for you. Like that all creates and comes into focus in your calling. And a lot of times that doesn't happen when you're 18. It's, you know, when you're 20, 30, 40 years old, you start to really get you understand this is who I am, you know? And then your assignment is where God chooses to pick you up and drop you place after place after place. And so when you can rest in your purpose, like I'm actually not going to find purpose in the job that I have. Like I'm going to find purpose in just knowing God and making him known in whichever way that looks in this season. And your calling is like, how did God wire me? What is my unique thing that has made me what I am? And so from a young age, I'm like, I'm a leader and a pastor, you know? And I would say that, you know, I pastored people in every role I was in, you know, and I've been doing consulting and working with big Christian organizations the last 2 years through Servant. That's probably a whole nother thing. But, you know, I just think for me, I just came to rest with that, to be like, God, you called me to love these people. And I love those people who believe different than I did, who thought that different than I did. And a lot of my employees knew where I stood on certain issues because of my faith, but they knew that I loved them anyway. So I disagreed with them on a lot of things on life, but you know, it was my job to love them and serve them. And they knew that I didn't treat them differently based on our differences theologically, you know. our definition of God was very different. Is there even a God? And so they knew, like, you can't be around someone long enough. They knew I was a believer. People know what I think. But how you treat people and love people and lead people. I think that safe place thing for me, I'm like, what does this really mean? But I go back to it, I'm like, yeah, I mean, honestly, I think people would say Drew is a safe guy to be around, because I'd push you, I'd encourage you. I cared about your career development. I cared about your families, and you don't have to believe like I believe for me to love you the way Jesus loves you. And I think that's where, to me, the North Point mission really began to resonate with me the more I got to understand it. I was like, yeah, I click with this. Yeah, I get it. And I think the arrows out concepts of where has God put you and are you others focused where you're at, And so I think I've been leading, teaching, pastoring people really my whole life, but the assignments moved around in ways I didn't expect. And even this one, to me, I'm like, wow, okay. Like I feel similar. I'm like, God, this is a massive assignment and I don't know if I've got what it takes, but it's like, God made it clear and it's like, okay, like, Lord, let's go. You love this church, you love this city, you love these people. And all I've got is my loaves and fishes, but you put what you've got in the hand of God and watch what he does. It can blow your mind. So.
Yeah, I would hope this is the same for anybody that would say, man, when I think about what I bring to the table, I'm reminded of how little it is.
Yeah.
And you're right. This is bigger than you.
Yeah.
Without God.
100%.
And, and I know that sounds cliche, but it's just, desperation is a better motivator than inspiration. And it's one of those where every day you wake up, you're like, oh, I'm desperate. So, and I know we're coming to an end, but you had talked real quick about transferring your worries to God each night.
Yeah.
Which I think that is, you could do a whole sermon on that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. You had gotten to a point.
Or you could.
we'll tag team it.
Yeah.
So you had gotten to a point at T-Mobile where you're like, I just think there's something else. Like I have a different assignment and I don't know what that's going to be yet. But you had gotten to a point where you had said, okay, walk me through that.
Yeah. I just, sometimes you sense grace lifting on your life. I was just like, God, there's more for me, because the heart for me was still like, yes, I'm doing this thing, but I just felt like, God, my gift mix is I talk a lot, I think a lot, I read a lot. You can ask me one question, I can go for 30 minutes.
I have learned that you're a verbal processor.
Yes.
So that doesn't mean do everything I say. That's just I'm going to say some things, we're going to throw it at a wall and find if something sticks.
Yeah, pray for my wife, right? Because she's like, what do you actually think? And I don't know what I think until I talk it out, so I can be a frustrating person to listen to sometimes. But so I know, my gift mix still felt like, God, I want to pastor and lead a church. Like I love what I'm doing. But I just felt like, Lord, I know you've called me to more. Like I want to take everything I have and empty the tank on building the kingdom of God, man. And like specifically, I want to tell people about Jesus. I don't want to allude to it at work, and I did that for a long time, but it's like, Lord, I just feel like I want to give my entire life to you and surrender. And the local church was my thing. That's what still has always moved me, is the local church. And so, I was actually in church one Sunday and I was processing that feeling of like, I felt the grace lifting. You ever feel like God's just pulling roots out of your heart? And it's like, oh gosh, he's moving me. And I don't know where I'm going. I just feel I'm being uprooted internally. But like my fear was money. I was like, I've always made money at this one company. I don't know how to provide for my family. I got 2 little kids. I got this whole thing. And, Lord, some people are like hyper spiritual and the Lord talks to them like every day and like we're to eat lunch. I'm not that guy, but there's times I can look back at my life and be like, man, God really spoke to me loud and clear in that exact moment, and I can look back at like that moment, and I felt like the Lord told my heart is in the middle of worship, like singing at church. And it was like, T-Mobile's not your provider. I am. And something in me broke in that moment because I realized that like I wasn't truly trusting God to provide. I wanted to figure out all the ways to make it happen. And so, I ended up putting in a resignation. I didn't know what I was going to do next. The way things worked, I needed to stay until March 1st. I came home one day and it was December. And Kristen, those paper chains you make together, you create for like counting down the days till Christmas when you're a kid.
We've got them.
Yeah. So when I knew I had to stay till March 1st, but I knew that God had made it clear, you're done. And I did not know what I was going to do next. I didn't know how I was going to provide for my kids, nothing. at the time. So Kristen, this will tell you how she is in a nutshell. She made one of those paper chains. I came home from a work trip and opened this box is for you, open it up, and it's this paper chain. She literally made a chain for every day up until March 1st because I was tore up. I'm like, I don't know how this is going to work. And she hung it. I ended up hanging it from like the curtain by our bed.
I was about to say, I'm like, dude, that might take up a whole room.
It did. No, it was on the floor. It was 90 something days, and it was wound up on the floor. And not only was a paper chain, inside every single one of them, she had taken a Bible verse about God's faithfulness and like taped it in there. So literally every day, I mean, I was tore up, not sleeping at night. God, what is happening to my life? This is who I am. I don't know who I am outside of this job. I would get up every day and tear off a paper chain, and there's a Bible verse in there about God's faithfulness. And she was like, start your day reminding yourself that God's faithful. So
Kristen is so much better than you.
She's the G. She's the G, right? She's not going to preach a sermon, but I'll tell you, like that woman, like she loves God, she loves people, she's awesome. But that's kind of what happened, and that's how I ended up working with Servant and been consulting and working with big churches and big Christian organizations the last 2 or 3 years, doing a strategy and technology stuff. And so, but yeah, so that is that's kind of that story, man. Like, but that's where God. You have these moments, right? Like I thought God was my provider theologically in my head. I'm like, well, that's true. Bible says so, right? But then it's got to get in your heart in certain moments.
Well,
man.
Even that moment of like, T-Mobile's not your provider, God is. And it's like, duh, but also like,
yeah,
I don't want to
easy to say.
So easy to say. Easy to see years later.
In hindsight, God's provision in hindsight is always obvious. But in the moments, that's where you got to come back and be like, okay, in Genesis, it talks about Sarah who looked back at God's faithfulness. And it says she accounted the promiser as faithful. She was like, it's not what was said, it's who said it. So when she's like, okay, you're going to have a child, it says she accounted him faithful, the promiser. And it's like, if his character is someone I can trust, then I can believe what he says. I can look back at a track record. That's what I'm talking about, history of North Point, 22 years. Yeah, twists, turns, changes. You know what I see? God's faithfulness and God's purpose. And so I can look at that and be like, God, this feels like a lot. Even though you watching or listening right now, you're like, who's this guy has, changed? But it's like, you know what? Hey, don't look at me. Don't look at you. Like, look at God and look back for 22 years. Okay, now is God surprised? Did he take his eye off the ball around here? Is it, North Point and Springfield, I forgot about those guys. No. He's not surprised. He's in it. And so we have one choice. I'm going to keep taking steps of faith, like the assignments change, things move. Hey, but God's moving forward. I can trust the promiser, and so, T-Mobile was my provider, God is, and it's like same thing for anyone listening right now. Like God is actually your provider, and whatever you're looking at right now, like he cares. His eyes in the sparrow. He's not forgot about you, And so sometimes you got to walk that out to get to a place you actually believe it, though, so.
I mean, you're preaching. So I'm with you. One of the things it says, judge God's faithfulness. That's one of the things you can judge. Not your brother or your sister, not the person, not your neighbor.
Yeah.
But judge his faithfulness. Look back in the past. That's a provision for how he's going to be faithful in the future.
Yeah.
And so here's what we're going to do. Because I'm faithful, or because I believe in the future, right? His promises. We're going to pause this episode right here. We've talked about a little bit of your past, how you got up to this point, and I want to talk in the next episode looking forward.
Yeah.
And what does this look like now? What does this potentially look like tomorrow? And we don't have to talk about 22 years from now, but I think it's cool looking back in the past 22 years. So Riff Raff, hang with us. We'll see you next episode. Welcome, co-host Drew Williams.
See you guys.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Riff. We'll have a brand new episode every week, wherever you find podcasts.